Alright, well let's get to it. So I don't mean for this to be a step 1, do this, step 2, do that build of this rocket. If that's something you want to do, you can follow the Estes plans verbatim, and you will have yourself a very fine flying Estes Goblin. Case in point, this Goblin right here was built per print, no changes whatsoever, and I have close to 50 flights on it. It has done me very well, and I look forward to flying it for a very long time. So for the sake of this build, my plan is to only highlight to you any deviations I have made from the plans, or things that I have done that aren't included on the plans at all. So let's get into it. So starting with the engine mount, I built this almost 100% per print, but made a couple of small changes to try and help increase the long-term durability of the engine mount. As you can see on the previous Goblin rocket, my retaining clip has gotten a little bit loose with time. So I've actually put together a couple of borescope pictures with my cell phone to show what this looks like from the inside. And the big problem is there's some space between the upper retaining clip position and the upper retaining ring of the interior of the motor mount. So as the ejection charges build up with time, it's degrading the quality of the engine mount tube, and this is becoming looser and looser. So with that being said, here is the engine mount that I have built for this rocket. Everything is done pretty much per print with a couple of notable differences. So if you look closely at the rear retaining ring and compare that to the plans of the rocket, the plans show that retaining ring flush with the upper portion of the engine tube. So if we look a little bit closer, you can actually see that per print, the engine retaining clip sits farther rearward in the rocket than the centering ring for the engine mount. So one thing that I had done for this build was I had actually slid the engine centering ring aft on the rocket by about 3/16 of an inch, so they would overlap with this centering ring. That would give it a little bit more durability as the ejection charges take place, and kind of, may potentially eat away at the engine tube there. So that's not enough to really affect anything on the rocket. It's just going to provide a little bit more structural help to that engine retention clip. The other thing, if we kind of look at the borescope pictures, this ring right here is sort of a secondary retention point to the engine clip that you can kind of see internally right there. They butt up against each other, which is good, but based off of the borescope pictures, this ring actually degrades very quickly. When the engine ejection charge takes place, this is just cardboard. So it kind of beats it up and burns it up pretty quickly. So for this build, what I have done is I have actually taken some thin CA glue and practically soaked the entire ring in that thin CA. So it makes it a lot harder and hopefully will provide a lot more protection against those ejection charge gases, to where this will maintain its integrity for a lot longer. So I mentioned in video 1 that I've had some issues with the elastic shock cord of the Goblin kind of breaking off and the rocket kind of tumbling down in separate pieces. As you can see, the ejection charge kind of stains the elastic band here from the hot gases, and I've actually had some problems with this separating from the rocket and having to recover the nose cone and the body of the rocket separately. So I'm trying to take a page from some of the more high-power rockets that are out there and add in a leader that would be in the body of the rocket itself that will be much less susceptible to the hot ejection gases. So this is a 200-pound test Kevlar kite string that I purchased online. So Kevlar cords are very common in some of your more high-power rockets that would be more directly involved with ejection gases. So I am going to be adapting this into a smaller, hobby-sized rocket. So if we kind of look at this, I'm going to slide the line through here. On the full rocket scale, so the motor mount is flush to the body, you can see that I have about 6 inches worth of this Kevlar cord that will be protruding from the rocket. I have every intention of attaching the elastic shock cord to this hoop right here, so that the brunt of the hot gases will be on the Kevlar cord and not on the elastic band. So when it's bonded into the rocket, you can see I've already got it attached to the motor mount here. It's looped around. I've got a small drop of wood glue here to hold it in place just for bonding purposes, but this will be the structural attachment of my shock cord and my recovery streamers to the rocket. I've got all 4 fins of the rocket here. They may look the same on video, but they are actually very different in the surface preps that I've done to them. So, fin number 1. This fin is just a plain balsa fin. I've done some planer sanding with some 220 grit sandpaper, and I've profiled the leading edge a little bit. So, I think for most of us, that's probably about as far as we ever go when we're building these model rockets. But as I am trying to eliminate, a lot of these dents and dings and things that you can see in the fins of my OG, the original Goblin, I want to do everything I can to try and keep this from happening, because it looks like crap. I can't stand it. So we'll move on from fin 1 to fin 2. What I've done is I've actually taken some thin CA glue. What I'm showing, this is some thick CA glue, but any of you who have been to your local hobby shop, you know what I'm talking about. They have a thin version, it's typically a blue label. And I coated the leading edge, outboard edge, and lower edge with this thin CA glue. So the CA glue will soak into balsa wood like a sponge. So you can actually tell a difference if you listen to the sound that it makes when you rub a fingernail on it. So this is plain balsa versus balsa that's got the CA on it. So it actually really helps to increase the rigidity and strength of the outboard edges. I did not do it on the edge that's going to bond to the rocket. So again, just plain balsa wood sanded, and this is sanded balsa wood with some CA along the outside edges, and then sanded down to be soft. So from there, I actually have done something that I haven't done before in all my years of building. Well, that burp was too far in to restart the video, so here we go anyway. I actually have employed some sanding sealer on the fins. So this is something that Estes actually recommends in all of their rocket builds. So sanding sealer is really meant for, well, all of the fin, the planar sides and the edges and all that. And what it does is soaks into the grain of the balsa, and it gives you a much more, we'll say a level plane here, to where when you spray paint it, you don't have paint going into the valleys of the grain. So this fin has been dipped into the sanding sealer one time. After it dried, I sanded it smooth. Now, you can't really see it too well looking at the fin, but if you look down the grain into some light, you can actually see a little bit of a shimmer along the grains where that sanding sealer has filled in some low spots. So not only does it seal the balsa, make it really good for painting, but there's a little bit of a durability aspect with it as well. So the last fin, this is a finished fin. This is a fin that is going to be going onto the rocket. There's nothing else I'm going to do to it. So this has had the CA around the periphery of the fin. It has had one dip into the sanding sealer, sanded down, and it was dipped a second time in the sanding sealer and then sanded down. So this one in particular, you can actually see, and I'm not sure if the camera is really capturing this or not, but there is a shimmer on the plane of the fins. Where'd you go? There you are. there is a shimmer on that plane of the fins where you can really see where it's filled in some of the low areas. So this is what I'm going for on all 4 fins. So the CA around the perimeter, dip in the sanding sealer, finish sand, and then a second dip in the sanding sealer and sand. So my hope is that this will provide some additional durability around the edge of the fins, as well as on the inside, to where I can have a really good finish paint job like I have on this Goblin, but to where I don't have to paint it 3 times to achieve that same finish. And hopefully the normal wear and tear from hanger rash that you can see on the fins here and from rough landings will not be as prevalent as I crank up the number of flights on this rocket. So that's what I'm planning on doing with the fins. So I'm going to ultimately CA the edges of this one, dip it in the sanding sealer twice. This one just needs some sanding sealer twice, and this one needs one more layer of sanding sealer. Alright, so here's my can of sanding sealer. Got this at Lowe's, I think for about 20 bucks. And this is enough for 1,000,000 rockets. I'll never be able to use it all before it spoils. So if you can find somebody who has some, just see if you can use some of theirs. So I'm just going to give it a little bit of a stir, just to show you what the planned process is here. So here is the fin that has already been dipped in the sanding sealer once. So all it needs is one more dip and a finished sand. So I've got a pin I've put into the tip of the fin, and I'm just going to dip it in deep enough to where I'm within about 1/16 of an inch of the end, and do a couple little submersions in there. I don't want to get it on the tip of the fin, the end of the fin that's going to bond to the rock, because I don't want to seal off that wood. I want to be able to have my my adhesive penetrate in there properly. So we can get these air bubbles off. That one more, and then once that has dried, I'm going to take my hanging apparatus here, which is just a piece of styrofoam, and tuck the fin into a slot here. So it'll drip dry onto my garage floor, which is just fine, no big deal. So once that one has been sanded, it'll be ready to go onto the rocket. Now here is the fin that has had just the CA put onto the side, so I've got my pin on that as well. This is its first dip. Again, try and get that within about a 1/16 or 3/32 of an inch of the end. A couple different dips and drips. We'll hang that one to dry as well. And that's the process. Now, as for the CA application, here's my thin CA. I didn't have it at arm's reach earlier, but this is about the consistency of water, so I'm just going to very lightly apply this to the periphery of the fins. And if it runs a little bit, that's okay. That's only going to help with the durability. And the end grains here is where it's really going to soak into the wood the best. Try your best not to glue the fins to your fingers, but I do it every time. You'd think I'd learn. I'll do it around this side as well. And once that soaks in, I'll let it dry. I'll do some face sanding on each side, a little bit of touch-up around the edges. I'll put an extra drop there on the corner just for good measure. And then it'll be ready to go through the same process you saw. Again, don't glue it to your fingers. On the other fins. Alright, so I have bonded in the motor mount and bonded on the fins, pretty much per the blueprints. Nothing really changed there, so I didn't think it was worth a step-by-step. But now, here comes the fun part. We've gone through how we've reinforced the physical balsa fins, so they've been bonded to the rocket. Now, we are going to build some super fillets between the body tube and the fins. So I've got some 2-part 15-minute epoxy and some micro balloons, and we are going to build up a epoxy paste, if you will, that we are going to use to build up fillets along the fins to increase the surface area between the fins and the tubes to hopefully produce a better resilience to hard landings. But we are getting close to the finish line, folks, so let's do this. Okay, so I've mixed together some resin and hardener in a disposable shot glass here. Going to mix this up with a popsicle stick. I'm pretty sure I got my proportions right. This is some pretty thick stuff to begin with, so not too worried about the viscosity. Now, have a little bit of a confession here. I've never done this before, so we're doing this together. Adding other micro balloons for the sake of a rocket, that is. So we're pour some of that into the mixture here. Continue to stir up. Whoa, messy. And I can already feel the consistency changing to more of a paste than the actual epoxy. So this is fantastic. So it's going to be super, super taut to the fins. As you can see, this got sort of almost like a vanilla icing consistency about it. Now, I have seen and been told by some people who've done this before that this can actually cause the epoxy to dry faster. So I'm going to put on a couple of gloves, and we're going to do our best not to waste time here. Alright, so I'm going to take that guy and put it over here. Going to take a finger load, build up the fillet, and yes, I know that I'm kind of making a huge mess here, but I'm going to take care of that here in a minute. So get it around the edges, and then use another finger to remove the excess. Remove the excess. Remove the excess. And I may very well be screwing this up big time. But we will be sanding this to a nice finish. So again, here goes nothing. Go lobbing it on. Oh, I can just hear people getting upset about this technique. I'm with you, folks. This is messy. I can already feel the adhesive kind of getting warm through the gloved finger here, which means that the reaction is starting to take place. So I want to get it in place, get it good. Then we'll come back and we'll kind of get off what we don't need. Alright, so now, new glove. Start to wipe off the excess. This is what's beautiful about having plans available. You can wipe that off. And the smearing is probably going to be alright, because I'm going to sand this away, and the micro balloons are really going to help with the sanded finish. Off the leading edges here. All right, I'm going to do one more glove change real quick. Go. Now, before getting in too deep to the final corrections here, that fillet is built up pretty good. So, when it comes time to do my finish sanding, that's part of the beauty of the micro balloons. Is that they will sand very, very easily. Going to take away a lot of that that brunt. So that'll be the next part here. Here's the pinky, kind of fair in all the other epoxy. Make it as smooth as we can tell here. The gloves are off. Now you can see that's actually a very nicely bonded fillet. And if I can kind of get that up close enough where you can see, that is not fantastic, but it is better than what you would typically get from traditional wood glue used in the same context. So this won't shrink as much as it dries. It'll be easier to sand. So I'm really pretty optimistic about what this is going to do for the rocket. Alright, like I said at the beginning of this video, I did not want to make this a step-by-step build or review of this rocket. But here we are. We've come to the end of our voyage. here is the OG, ready to fly. We're going to be flying it again very soon. So, I have gone through and finished up all of the changes needed for the new Goblin. I put in the guide lugs, I have primed, I have painted, I have sanded, and I have done the finish coats and everything. The streamers, the recovery system is installed, and we are ready to go. So now, the time has come to show you what this beast is going to look like. And here we go. It's kind of hard to tell just by looking at it, but the sanding sealer that we put on the fins is absolutely gorgeous. There is a shine and shimmer on this rocket, the likes of which I have not built before, and I'm very excited. I can't wait to do it again for future ones. So, we got the rubber chicken on the rocket, so we are ready to rock and roll. But just to take a closer look at the fins there, with the water transfer decals on the rocket. We got the guide lugs in place. It is ready to fly. So, for part 3 of this series, we are going to be flying this new Goblin on a full D-size motor. Can't wait. Really looking forward to seeing this thing in action. This is an amazing rocket. Like I mentioned in part 1, I encourage you all to find one. They're very much available on Amazon or online. This is an excellent rocket. It's a great performer, and I can't wait to see how this one does with the changes that we have made. So, until next time, folks.